comments, all pro and all con. Thank you so much for being here. We got to move on. Now we get into things that's a little bit different. Some wonderful things. If you could stay, if you fractured, non-fractured, pro-fractured, you can stay. I think you'd really be happy to hear what we have to say next. I'd ask Mr. Jim Brutner to please come forward. We'll do that. Maybe. Brutner, welcome. We're going to skip, we are going to do adjustments to the agenda here just in a second, but a lot of these folks, if you're with the health department, if you'd please come up, just appreciate it. Other places. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very special night for our local health department. If you've not heard the news, go ahead. 2014 National Association of County and City Health Officials presented the Small Health Department of the Year Award. Macon County Public Health was recently honored at the 2014 annual conference of the National Association of County and City Health Officials in Atlanta. Local Health Department of the Year Award was awarded to the Macon County Health Department. Recognizes, honors one local health department from a small, medium, or large municipal jurisdiction for innovation, creativity, and impact on our community. This year's winners were selected for their contributions toward the adoption of the outstanding internal or external policies. Macon County Public Health was selected for this national award for its recent efforts toward establishing a county ordinance limiting the use of tobacco products at county parks and recreation facilities. Yes. This helps to protect public health, particularly the health of our youth, was distinguished for its innovative involvement of youth, its ability to secure private funding to eliminate costs of the county, and creativity in building community support among the general public, key stakeholders, and decision makers. So, on behalf of the people, if you'd like to join me,
go ahead.
Since you represent the health department.
I represent these folks.
Okay.
Oh, you should be up there.
You stand in front of the podium, please.
Get good help.
In front of the podium.
No. And not only the health department, this is another example of one of our departments in our county, which in our community is an outstanding organization. When you think Habitat for Humanity, you might just think, well, they do some self-help homes, or they do other things. Well, in this county, that is partially true. But what they do to help the everyday citizen of Macon County, we have formed a partnership, they have formed a partnership, we work together on it, with the housing program of Macon County. And through that program, I'm going to read some numbers that benefit Macon County citizens through the work of Habitat for Humanity. And these folks that are here tonight that work every day with some citizens of Macon County. So, they've been 43, this is 2013 numbers. This is Habitat. Please come up here. Please come up here.
John.
Here come up.
Go to the podium.
Harley. You're up here.
Hardly.
Folks, these gentlemen in front of you with support, there was a lady that's supposed to be here. Where's she at? Please step up there. I can't see you.
She got a small camera.
Just to give you a little idea about habitat in Macon County, and Rick can certainly speak to this, Jackson County's Habitat for Humanity basically lost its charter. You'll never see another Habitat chapter ever in Jackson County. But because of Macon County's, the leadership and the work that these men and ladies in front of you provide, and many, many more, they now are also in charge of Jackson County. When you talk to folks in Jackson County, they cannot be more appreciative because they're working over there to help folks, not necessarily with new housing, but any kind of housing. Some of the places these gentlemen work on in our community, unless you've been to them, saw them, and helped work on them, you just wouldn't think that would be in our community. But these folks in front of you have worked on 43 major projects. This is 2013. And 2014 is off and even busier. They have totaled over 3,000 hours in volunteer labor. They have spent, out of the money they've raised, if you didn't go to the shrimp boil and pay you $20, they'll still take it and you get your shrimp next year. But they spent over $25,000 just in partial materials. This don't account for a lot of it. Some of it's donated. They do get help in a lot of ways. Mr. Westman is going to speak to that after we make a small presentation to him. We've asked the Habitat to come forward for one reason, and that's just to thank them for what they do for the Macon County families in this community that a lot of us don't have association with day to day. But because of these gentlemen in front of you and this organization, tonight they have a roof over their head. And without these folks in front of you, that would not be. So if you're not involved with Habitat, if you don't know what Habitat does, if you will call the office or call Mr. Westerman, he'll be more than happy to sit down with you and talk with you and give you a lesson how you can volunteer, and they will put you to work. So with that, we have just a small gift and token of our appreciation for the Board of County Commissioners that I will present to Mr. Westerman and to the staff. And it seems mighty small for what they do, but I'll assure you these folks don't do it to be standing in front of a group and be recognized. They do it for the right reasons every day. This gentleman I know works a full-time job, but yet puts in hundreds of volunteer hours with Habitat for Humanity. Same here, John Word is the outreach director for Habitat and does a wonderful job. Pete tried to retire on us. That ain't gonna happen either. But Pete has been there for a long time. Plonk is just retired from Caterpillar. Works full-time, I don't know how many hours a week, but full-time at Habitat. Volunteer hours, I know. He don't pay very well. Rick is the executive director of the Habitat for Macon and Jackson counties. He does a wonderful job. He's going to speak to you all here in a second. Of course, you got to have other folks that support him from the board. And that's what we have here. And of course, you got to have somebody that keeps them all under control. And this is the secretary. So, with that, Mr. Westerman, it is with great pride and privilege not only to say thank you, but how much we appreciate what you do, the cooperation you've given. You know, the housing program, through the recession, they had cutbacks also, as most everything did. This group stepped up to do what needed to be done to continue to help these folks. We cannot thank you enough. So what this is, it just says special thanks to the Macon County Board of County Commissioners. And thank you every day for what Habitat does for the folks in our community. Thank you. We also have a beautiful set of wooden pins that just again, these are just small tokens of our appreciation. We can never repay what Habitat has and continues to do every day. The Habitat resale store is open every day. They have some great stuff, and we'd encourage you to go by there. Mr. Webster is going to give a short presentation to the board, but we thank you all for coming so much for what you do every day. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, thanks. John, thank you. We appreciate it. Give him a good hand. Mr. West, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. We not only work for the residents of Macon County, we also partner with the other nonprofits. We do work for the Pregnancy Center. We do work for REACH. We've worked out in their shelter and done work, bring it up to code and stuff. We do work out in the Humane Society. We put windows in that in for the dogs and cats so they can see outside. Which I guess is a good thing for them, so they can see. But we try to give back to everybody, so we don't just help just the residents that we do with the other nonprofits. And now that we've gotten into Jackson County, and that wasn't an easy feat. It took 2.5 years and 5 attorneys to get through that mess. We do now have a collegiate chapter over there at Western Carolina. That's where we're getting our manpower. We've opened a store over there in the Gibson's Furniture Store. And if you don't know where that is, just say Jack the Dipper, the ice cream store, and everybody knows where that is. And if you don't know where Jack the Dipper is, just say the ABC store. Everybody knows where that is. But we've opened that store, and it's moving right along. And we're trying to get that county back up to speed. And it's a challenge running both counties. But it's been very successful here, like Ronnie said, during the recession. We ran low on money, and John Fay had plenty of money, but didn't have the labor, so that partnership worked out real well for us, and it's still working out real well, and we want to continue to work it. And we appreciate the support from the county commissioners. We hope to keep that support going and continue helping the residents of Macon County.
Any questions for Rick?
No, but I got a comment for him. This is really great thing. I've been to the store regularly too.
You're one of our best customers.
Call it that or a victim. That's victim.
Commissioner Tate.
Thank you.
Rick. Next, we have Town Alder Lady Barbara McCrae. She's here tonight to talk about Historic Preservation Week in Macon County. Alder
Thank you.
Lady, yes.
Thank you. On behalf of the Macon County Historical Society, which is having their annual meeting tonight, so nobody else can come, and a group that is planning to have an art show October 4th featuring the historic properties of Macon County. It's the Association of to support the visual arts. I'd like to ask you to please proclaim the week of beginning October 4th to the 10th, Historic Preservation Week in Macon County. We hope to use that as an opportunity for our history that everybody can enjoy. And that's all.
Barbara, you're asking for a proclamation?
Yes, and I believe.
So we'll pass that in September. You want to look at the read tonight?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
The show is October, and the week is.
This proclamation has been presented to declare October 4th through the 10th. We, the Commissioners of Macon County, North Carolina, wishing to celebrate the historic places of our beautiful mountains, honor those who have beautifully tended them, and encourage the preservation of the county's rich history. Do hereby declare the week of October 4th through the 10th, 2014, Historic Preservation Week in Macon County. Is that the proclamation?
Yes.
Pleasure of the board. Do we have a second? Second. Motion been made and seconded that we declare October 4th through the 10th, 2014, Historic Preservation Week in Macon County, and it will be recorded as such. And the proclamation, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That would be unanimous. That's great.
Thank you.
And thank you. Ms. McCrae will also be present on Thursday, representing the town. We will be bringing about 80 commissioners from all across the state. Ms. McCrae will be representing the town. We will be doing them with some gifts. I appreciate her involvement and thank her very much. So, thank you for what you do, Barbara. We I can read everything with the birds. Sometimes I get lost.
We'll
But
get
we
to
thank
that.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have a Region 8 update from Region 8 Director, Mr. Ryan Shirley. Mr. Ryan, if you'll give these folks an opportunity to. Hey, Ryan. Well, we're glad you're here. Ryan, you have some folks with you, or they have to leave?
I sent them home once I realized the length of the meeting.
Okay. We're glad you stayed, Ryan. You have the floor, sir.
Sure, I'll be brief since you all are on a roll now. The Southwestern Commission is a voluntary organization owned by the local governments in the 7 western counties of North Carolina. The board is comprised of typically the chairman from every county and the 16 mayors. So this is completely owned by local government. Again, it is voluntary. It is funded primarily through federal grants and funds from the federal government through federal authorizations, such as the Older Americans Act and the Workforce Investment Act. We also receive some Economic Development Administration funds and some Appalachian Regional Commission funds. And more importantly, our local governments contribute to the organization 75 cents per capita. That across the 7 counties and the 17 towns comes to about $150,000 a year. With those local funds, we leverage approximately, it fluctuates every year, but between $6 and $8 million per year. A lot of that gets passed directly through to the counties. Some of it 100% gets passed through, such as the Juvenile Crime Prevention Program. And a lot of our aging dollars get directly passed through. We are responsible for the oversight of those funds and to ensure that those funds are spent properly within the region. I was going to let each of the 3 primary department heads provide a quick update of what they've been working on. Instead, I think I'll just pluck one piece from each department so you can get an idea of kind of the broad range of services that we provide. And all of our services, it's as short as I could get it, is in that 11 by 17 that I provided you. All right, so in community and economic development, we have primarily 2 staff people in there, but that's where I spend most of my time. On page 2, the revolving loan fund. This is the program that I put most of my effort into. It was originally capitalized, I think, in the late 60s by the Economic Development Administration. They granted the region about $600,000. We have loaned that out to businesses. These are loans, with interest, and that balance is up to about $5 million. So we've turned that over and turned it over. It's a revolving loan fund. Cash on hand is about $1 million, so we can loan that out to small businesses in the region that are willing to create jobs. We are not in competition with the local banks though, so we need to see a bank denial letter. These are for small businesses that are not currently commercially lendable. So I consider us the lender of last resort. We have lent to agricultural projects, we've lent to breweries, we've lent to gun shops, the full range of infrastructure, the full range of small businesses in western North Carolina. To date, I think the job creation numbers, which not all of these businesses are still in business, but the metrics that I show, 753 jobs created over the length of the program and 390 retained. So if you know a small business that is willing to expand, as long as we can collateralize the loan via equipment purchase to help them either gain customers or add employees, please send them my way. Workforce development. We provide staff to the Workforce Development Board. These are primarily federal revenues through the Workforce Investment Act, which I believe was just reauthorized, and now I think it's WOIA, the Workforce Investment Opportunity Act, but same principle. And it's a welfare to work type program. So we help train people. We can subsidize some training costs for folks that are low income. We can help them get them to a community college and try to get them integrated into the workforce. We also work with, when we have a plant layoff, we go in, we survey, we find out what they're most worried about, we supply information packets. But we can also help those folks get retrained and retooled to integrate back into the economy. The whole impetus behind the Workforce Investment Act is to get people back to work. We also provide, through that program, some services to employers, such as on-the-job training. If you own a small company and you need an employee, Commissioner Tate, we can oftentimes subsidize some of that salary while you're training that individual. Once you have them trained to perform the function of the job force, that subsidy would go away. Another effort to get people back to work. So we actually enroll people in these programs. They come to us. We have case managers throughout the region. Area Agency on Aging, the last bucket of work that we work in. Services to older adults. We can help with legal documents such as wills, power of attorney. The piece of the program that I really like is our ombudsman. It's a long-term care ombudsman. His name's Larry Reeves. He used to run the Alzheimer's Association. But he advocates for residents' rights. And so if there's a complaint in a nursing home, instead of that entering the legal system, we send our staff personnel there, and it's all confidential, and they mediate the complaint. A lot of times, it's family issues.
Tonight we have used that, I can tell this board and these folks present, Macon County, as I'm the liaison to that, we've used it many more times than once.
Yes, he stays very busy, and the whole idea is to try to resolve the complaint outside of the judicial system. So, also funded through the Older Americans Act. So those are the three main buckets that we work in. We are also demand driven. So if Macon County is going through some type of process and they need some additional staff horsepower, our organization is at your disposal. You own the organization. You help fund the organization. My phone number is at the top front of the sheet. Please call on me anytime, and I'll answer any questions that you all may have.
I think, Ryan, you need to speak to a little bit. The state is coming to the COGS more and more often for everything. The TRC, if you want to speak to the transportation issue, they're so independent, you know, of what those of us who serve on that, the point system, which I'm a real fan of. And that's what we talked about in Silva, but that's where everything is run through the college. And, you know, how many people do you have involved now, Ryan? How many towns and counties, municipalities, and how long have they been continuously involved?
1965, all full dues-paying members.
Of what we'll have a Macon County person who's which follows his father, of course, the late Harold Porter, who served as chair of the Southwest Commission. And we're excited that Kevin is going to be chairman. And there's just a lot of things that you can't do in a 5-minute period, Ryan, that we know that the Southwest Commission does every day for the county. And those of us who call on the Sir Jean Meltons more often than we ever want to, or questions that we have for economic development. The work you work so closely with Tommy Jenkins, we know that for a fact. As the Department of Commerce, you know, is sort of, we don't know exactly where they're at. So,
Well, I do know that our economic developers that work through the Department of Commerce at Asheville, those have been privatized, and now there's 5 positions in Raleigh. So we don't have representation in Asheville anymore. So we're good at fending for ourselves as a region.
we've learned that over time.
We have. I think we're more equipped to handle that than a lot of communities.
I think the board will be interested in knowing the discussions that we've had, that going forward of a lot of things that we're probably going to be looking at regionalizing even more. Save us all money. And we've talked about that at length. Have a good relationship with other counties.
I think there's a lot of opportunity for shared service agreements among the counties where one county might own or they all share a heavy piece of equipment.
Our county manager's working on some of those, and we'll be hearing about those soon.
Now, just a couple of closing comments. We have no taxing authority. We have no authority at all. So we are simply a regional shared resource for our local governments owned by our local governments. So we appreciate your support.
Thank you, Ryan. Ryan has been on the job for a year and
November will be 2 years.
2 years.
But I served as transportation planner. Last time I was in front of this board, I was sharing transportation projects as part of your transportation plan that you conducted with the NCDOT.
If you don't have anything you need to ask Ryan, I think our county manager can attest to that. As he come on, all you got to do is give him a call.
Absolutely. They've been really great to work with, a very knowledgeable group of people over there, and they're always very responsive and get you the information you request. I really appreciate all the help that they do.
Any questions for Mr. Sherman? Ryan, thank you for coming.
Can you
You're gonna be late getting home.
Can you get a food truck for big nights like
Huh?
this? Parking lot?
Well, I don't need to, they say McDonald's stays open late.
That depends on the council of governments.
And we're fixing to take a break.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Commissioners.
We appreciate it so much. While you're getting your PowerPoint ready, this board will take. Thank you for that. We'll reconvene at in about 7 minutes. So, we'll see your PowerPoint.
Mayor.
Allow us to go ahead. We have several people here from the Macon County Health Department. So Mr. Bruckner, if you'd come forward, please. We'll go ahead and take care of this bit of business. Mr. Higdon, this is Liaison. We'll introduce you and tell you what we need to do. Mr. Higdon.
Jim Bruckner.
I'm going to let somebody else do the talking in a minute here, but what it is you approved with our budget for us to purchase an electronic health record for the health department. And we've done what we feel is pretty good due diligence. We've made a selection of a record. And we just want to kind of tell you in a nutshell what that process was and why we selected the one that we did. So, Diane.
Welcome, Diane. Thank you for staying with us. It's only 9 o'clock.
I like breakfast too. Each of you may have noticed that if you've been to the doctor lately, that they don't carry a chart around anymore. They carry a little computer around. And that is a federal requirement that we at the health department must comply with as well. Over the past couple of years, we've been preparing for this transition. I've gone and taken some classes and have received my health informatics certification. I've participated in HIS regional users groups, and Mr. Bruckner has participated in the Health Director's Informatics Committee. All of this has worked together to help us look forward to the future with an electronic health record. Several years ago, the state promised an electronic system. In 2010, we went live with the HIS, or Health Information System, and it is a practice management system at this time. This is just consists of the check-in and billing process, and it has a very cumbersome system. The state has promised the clinical management component since 2010, and here we are in 2014, and we still do not have that. And we have no hope of it coming before the deadline of 2015. We have spent almost 2 years researching electronic health records, looking at demonstrations and reading information. We've looked at functionality, processes, and the flexibility of adding state health department forms and statistical reports. From this research, we narrowed the field to 3 systems: CureMD, Patagonia, and Insight. We ruled out Insight pretty quick because it was astronomical in cost, and a couple of the counties that already have that program would like to get rid of it, and they told us that verbally. So we just did not pursue that one with that much interest. Both CureMD and Patagonia have public health experience and has worked with the state to develop specific programs that would allow users to report required statistical data to the state and continue to receive those cost settlement dollars. And you guys have heard that statement before. That's what we get from Medicaid. It usually comes in a very large lump sum. Approximately 6 months ago, we put together a larger team representing several specialties within the health department, along with our county IT staff. These included Mr. Bruckner, Ms. Tammy Kieser, Ms. Angela Ruffner from our clerical section, Ms. Cheryl Ramey, and Ms. Jennifer Garrett from our nursing section, and Amanda Blanton from our IT, as well as help from Mr. Muncie and Ms. Wright. We asked Patagonia and CureMD to provide a demo for this group, which they did, and then we decided to go on the road and see it in action. So we went to Madison County, who has CureMD, and we stayed there for several hours, divided up into groups, and actually saw the system in its working environment. Then we went to Wilkes County Health Department to observe Patagonia. So we felt like we gave each of them equal time. Finally, we asked both companies to come back to the health department for a presentation to all clinical staff and clerical staff, and any users that would be using the system. Today, there are less than 25 health departments across the state that are still on the state system, which today we're still operating on. We have waited without any hope for the state to provide what we need to meet federal requirements and to be able to continue to bill Medicare and Medicaid dollars. So if we don't go electronic, we do not get to bill Medicare and Medicaid at all. Today's example, we had a conference call set up with the state that was canceled at the last minute, saying that they still were not ready to give us any additional information on the clinical side. Okay, in your packet, I think, Mike, they've got a handout, right? Yes. You should have an outline of the required cost for the first year for one of the systems, which is Patagonia. And I can compare the CureMD price for the first year is $46,239. The one that you have is the Patagonia price at $42,250. So you can see there's not much difference in the price of the two systems. However, after looking a little further, doing a little bit more research, we, as a group, presented both of the systems to the Board of Health, and we are privileged to have Ms. Price with us tonight from the Board of Health, and to the staff. We asked input from all members, and the consensus is that we feel that Patagonia would best serve our needs. Patagonia is working with the state to ensure that all reporting fields are transmitted electronically. They have a built-in EDI, which is an electronic billing system, where we can bill all of our insurance claims electronically and not have to go to several different sites to submit each claim. Patagonia has established a regional users group and a reports group. They've established a health directors group, and Patagonia is application driven, unlike the other system we observed. Therefore, downtime for upgrades is kept to a minimum. Since this is a very large purchase, we would request your support in moving forward with the purchase of Patagonia's electronic health record. Mr. Bruckner, Mr. Muncie, and Ms. Price, do you feel like there's anything else that you would like to add to this?
When we evaluated the two systems, Patagonia seemed to be the one better positioned for the future. CureMD had some good features, but it seemed more packet-driven than intuitive, and there is very little difference in the cost, and it is worth a slight difference to do that.
Mr. Muncie, you're the man that has to keep it running, what do you say?
We've reviewed the documentation and our staff are taking the Patagonia solution to feel that's the best choice for them.
He's not him, what next?
That's it. Yeah, as I said in the beginning, you've already approved the money in the budget for the purchase of the system. We just want to inform you of what we were purchasing and how the process we went through so that you guys are well aware of what's happening.
What happens after the first year?
After the first year,
And how much warranty do you have on this?
we have, of course, we've got yearly maintenance that we've been paying. One other advantage that Patagonia has is they have hired state staff that we were used to working with since 2010, and have done work for
Who
this.
does the training?
Yes.
We've had a little trouble with training in systems in our county. Mr. Muncy, so it's your responsibility to make sure that the trainers, the trainees, and all the trainers show up. Okay? You know, we had trouble with that, and on occasion, yes. Thank you, Jim. Diane?
Thank you.
Sheila? Andy? Thank you. This is for information only, right? Okay, thank you. All right. All right, Dr. Brian Burke has been very patient. He is from the County Listening Project. We didn't realize you had a PowerPoint on the agenda when the chairman and myself and the county manager were working on it, so we apologize for that, Dr. Burke. But we're glad you're here now, and we understand it will not run in excess of about 8 minutes, is that right?
That's right.
Okay, and it's on our screen? It is? Okay,
All
we're
right.
back, and this is, Mr. Burke, you have the floor. Welcome.
Well, thank you for straightening me out on the agenda, and thanks everyone for inviting us here, or providing us a few minutes to provide basic information on hydraulic fracturing or fracking. As Chairman Beal said, this has sparked some controversy in North Carolina as in other areas, and so we really wanted to take this opportunity to provide information based on scientific research that's been done related to the issue. I'm Brian Burke. I'm here with my colleague Jen Rice from the University of Georgia, and we're both part of the Coweta Listening Project, which in a nutshell is really trying to bring science and scientists together with the public. And all of the research that we drew from for this presentation is either from independent scientists or from government agencies that were commissioned to do research on fracking. So, in a nutshell, how does fracking work? Some of the previous speakers already addressed this to some degree, but unlike areas that have a large underground lake of gas, that's not what we have here in North Carolina. You can imagine lots of small pockets within the rock, each of which has gas in it, and so you need to pool all of that up. So the way they do that is they drill a vertical well hundreds to thousands of feet down, and then a horizontal well through all those little pockets, up to several thousand feet further to the top. And they pump fluid into it at extremely high pressure in order to cause the rock to crack. Now this fluid has, by volume, it's mostly water, but it can also include several up to several hundred chemicals.
I was trying to interrupt.
Yeah.
Guess what? Why don't we see more efficient? So they drill down thousands and thousands of feet down. Is this cased all the way down? Or they just case it to the hard rock like you do a water well and then keep on going?
That's a good question. I am not certain how they do it in all areas. I think it depends on the geological makeup of the particular site where they're drilling. In this area, they would only, according to Diener, they would only, in most of North Carolina, they would only have to drill down about 2,000 feet before drilling horizontally. So then that fluid also contains chemicals and sand which work to hold those cracks open and to lubricate them so that the gas can flow continually and they can recover it. When you look at the entire fracking process, it's important to note that it's not just the well, but a series of a whole range of infrastructure that needs to be built, both for water acquisition, for storing and mixing in those chemicals and sand, and then in particular for dealing with waste, especially what's called blowback, or wastewater that comes out of the process. Between 90 and 35% of the water that's pumped into the ground comes back up almost immediately. That's the blowback. And then the remaining 2/3 or more, leaks out over time. So all of that has to be dealt with. There are a number of ways to do it, and it's not clear yet in the North Carolina law and rules how that will be dealt with here. But what's particularly important is, I think, you all probably know, the Energy Policy Act of 2005 exempts oil and gas companies from many federal regulations, including the Clean Drinking Water Act, the Clean Water Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Clean Water Act. So ensuring the clean, safe oil and gas operations that people spoke about really depends on work at the state and the local level. I'm going to skip over, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip over some of these details about the policies. These are the three main North Carolina bills that have made fracking an issue here now. The bottom line is that the Mining and Energy Commission has developed a set of draft rules related to public safety, environmental standards, and well operations that are currently open for public comment. And that state regulations currently preempt any local ordinances that ban fracking or significantly limit fracking. Most of the most probable high revenue fracking areas are in the central part of the state. And that's where most of the research has been done. So if you go, I strongly support what Mr. Drummond said about the 2012 North Carolina oil and gas study that was done by Diener. I'd recommend that everybody read that, at least the executive summary. It's probably the most up-to-date document about fracking in North Carolina. That's done on these central North Carolina deposits. If you look at our area, you'll see there are potential shale gas deposits under all 7 of the southwestern counties. In Macon County, it's particularly the western third of the county. And you've already been made aware of the testing for these, essentially 2 phases. The first will look very quickly at the rock in a very inexpensive way to determine how much carbon is contained in it, and how that rock was formed. And if it looks like there's potential, if it looks like there's potential in that rock, then they'll do a second wave of testing that's more intensive. So the proponents of fracking stress 4 main benefits, and here's where I want to draw from research related to each of the benefits and each of the concerns that have been presented. The first is that that fracking provides a really strong domestic energy source. The U.S. Energy Information Administration states, quote, that shale gas provides the largest source of growth in U.S. natural gas supply. Second, they promote fracking because it provides jobs and supports the economy. And this is the 2012 oil and gas study reports that drilling activities in the Sanford subbasin, that Central Carolina area, would sustain an average of 387 jobs per year for the 7-year time period of production. And the same report says that 36% of the investments in drilling would be spent in North Carolina, with North Carolina vendors. As some of the previous speakers mentioned, natural gas is considered a cleaner burning fossil fuel than coal, and the Environmental Protection Agency especially emphasizes that it produces half as much carbon dioxide than coal, less than 1/3 of the nitrogen oxides, and 1% as much sulfur oxide, all of the contaminants. And it costs less. Over the last several years, according to the Energy Information Administration, the price of natural gas has remained relatively low and relatively stable. To help decision makers weigh the pros and cons of fracking, scientific researchers have examined a range of environmental and social and economic impacts as well. On the environmental front, they especially emphasize water quantity and water quality. You heard people earlier mention the North Carolina estimate is that each well would take about 3 to 5 million gallons of water.
Does that have to be clean water?
It has to. There are. I don't believe that it requires the same degree of treatment as water for human consumption, but it does require treatment, yes. And according to Diener, quote, the state currently has no ability to ensure that groundwater or surface water withdrawals for natural gas will be appropriately managed to avoid stream impacts or conflicts with other water users, which is a concern in an agricultural area, obviously. Researchers from Duke University have done a number of research studies on water quality issues and they emphasize that threats to water resources come from spills on the surface, from wastewater disposal, and from drinking water contamination. And Diener has emphasized that in North Carolina, the potentially productive rock deposits are much closer to groundwater supplies than in many other states where fracking is concerned. So that elevates the concern for drinking water contamination. Some of the exact mix of chemicals used in fracking is, in many cases, protected by law as a trade secret. But some of the chemicals used include methanol, sulfuric acid, and formaldehyde. And there's concern with fracking, that process of fracking the rocks, also releasing naturally occurring heavy metals and salts that can also be hazardous for health. Research on health is tricky, in large part because, as Dr. David Brown says, and his colleagues from the Southwest Pennsylvania Environmental Health Project, they've reported that current monitoring protocols don't allow us to adequately understand the impacts that fracking has had on health. So the types of water sampling, air sampling, and health monitoring that have been required by law aren't fine-grained enough to pick up the types of damages that might have happened. So that the health impacts are poorly understood, and to this point largely anecdotal. Air pollution and related health issues are another major concern, especially due to the release of methane and nitrous oxides, which both increase ozone concentrations. And in upstate New York, which has gone ahead with fracking on a fairly large scale, they expect a 10% increase in nitrogen oxide pollution, which will increase ozone levels above clean air standards. Fracking can be boiled down to 4 areas, really. There's a number of studies that report on community impacts due to the sudden influx of out-of-state workers, largely young men who suddenly have large salaries. And they have emphasized problems with crime, prostitution, and drug abuse, especially. And then there are broader studies of other quality of life issues related to traffic congestion and noise, as well as some other more minor complaints. The economic studies have tended to focus on some of those short-term impacts that I mentioned before, like jobs and purchasing from state industries, as well as the impacts on other industries like tourism and residential development. And so they've tried to weigh those trade-offs. And they've emphasized especially the increased cost of living for local people, particularly with rental housing. So in other areas in North Carolina and North Dakota and Pennsylvania, fracking has tended to have an especially negative impact on low-income people because of the rise in housing costs. You heard about the property rights issues already, including forced pooling, decreases in property values, and restricted access to loans and some mortgage programs, including federal agricultural loans. And you've already mentioned the issues with local governments in terms of having a say on the regulations. There have also been concerns from other regions about increased demands for local government services like policing, emergency services, road maintenance, public schools, and water and waste management. And especially concerned balancing those demands with revenues, and especially unsteady revenue streams coming out of fracking operations. So that's a quick summary, the quickest summary I could manage, or we could manage, of the range of research on benefits and costs or concerns related to fracking. We hope that this has been useful. I'm a little sorry that that more people weren't able to stick around, because I think addressed some of the questions asked earlier. And moving forward, we'd like to make ourselves available to the Commission and to any other local organizations. To steal a phrase from Mr. Sherby, we are also demand-driven. So whether it's related to fracking or related to some other issue, we're happy to work with y'all if we can be of service, kind of synthesizing science on issues. So thank you.
Thank you. Forward, I mean, that's what we're looking for in this informative, people in this program. whatever the strengths are. But, find out really, a lot of it, to be honest with you, don't, like, drilling horizontally 2 miles, is that feasible?
It is feasible. It's amazing.
See, a 1,000-foot well here is huge.
Yeah.
So, we appreciate you coming. Question?
I appreciate the advice. I'm familiar with fracking. I'm involved in North Dakota
Okay.
oil plant, and we're familiar with this and studied it. We did get a lot of misinformation tonight. There is a lot of scare tactics to this. As one gentleman read, Savage Ewell and all of the EPA administrators have said that this is a safe product. And I appreciate you coming. I mean, this is a process of education. I appreciate that's your role. And I challenge this board to educate themselves. It's very easy to do. And I don't want it to get in, I want it to remain a scientific decision-making process. And I'm afraid that what we're seeing initially, not from y'all, is that it's a political thing. We're bashing, we're mad that the Republicans took over in Raleigh, we're going to get this out. You know, this is a tool to do it. Next week we'll see the same thing with education. And I think it's incumbent on each of us to educate ourselves. Now, I'm a very pro-fracking guy. I mean, that's just the way I am. I think it's great for the economy of North Dakota that you did mention some things, the drugs, the local services, those are things that have to be addressed. But it's a hot potato, and it's incumbent on all of us to gather our own facts. And there's been a lot of misinformation and a lot of, on both sides, put out there. So do your research, study, but we do appreciate you coming.
Well, and like I say, we're happy to provide additional documents too, or to help. I think we can provide all the resources that we use to put this together.
What do y'all think about the current fracking that we have in drinking water wells? I mean, I know you just made a presentation, it's not appropriate for me to question, but I've sat here as long as I can keep my mouth shut.
I don't know enough about the fracking in drinking water wells. I know that the fracking in drinking water wells is different from the fracking.
It's absolutely different, but it involves high pressure.
That's right.
And water.
That's right. It involves high pressure and water. It involves different chemical mixes and different mining technologies as well because of the horizontal mining. So I'm not able to.
Okay. It is amazing what they can do with this.
It's
and
mind blowing, really.
It's
yeah.
You know, it was interesting, I was in Washington, a lady from North Dakota, and she was commissioner for North Dakota. It wasn't, you know, he said there were some very good things about it. She said, what surprised her the most, it was like a traveling farm. The people who came into work, and what it did to their school. And these people pay this much taxes. You know, she said that has been the biggest impact. She said after, when you get people's pocketbooks, they forget about the environmental stuff. You start talking. And have you, in your research, do y'all look into that, or?
We have. There's one study I was just looking at. The only study I've seen that specifically addressed that, which doesn't mean it's the only one that exists, was a group of economists looking at these booms and busts and how those affect towns. Because you get all this money in, you get all these people coming in, you have to provide all these services, you build up the infrastructure to do that, and then it disappears. And the town's got to figure, or the county in this case, has to figure out what to do with that infrastructure and how to maintain it. So that's what they were emphasizing.
But that pattern exists with all different types.
It does. That's right.
You know.
That's right. Part of what their research has shown that is that it depends how dependent a region is on one particular industry. Right. If you're more diverse, it's like investments. If you're more diversified, there's less risk of a large bust.
Yeah, so that's right.
Thank you for coming, Dr. Burke.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it.
We appreciate it.
Feel
very
free to
much.
get in touch.
Are you at Cade all the time? Is that?
I'm not. I'm in Appalachian State, so I'm up in Boone. Down here. But I'm happy to. I'll share my email address with you all.
Okay. If you'll get to Derek will.
Great.
Thank y'all so much. All right, moving right along. Doug Johnson. Doug has been faithful and steady and waiting. Doug, welcome. Doug's going to talk to us about the Fox Creek project that we heard a little bit about before. We'll let these folks get settled down, Doug, and we'll get.
Good evening. I thank the board for the opportunity to take a few moments on the agenda. And as Ronnie said, we are, I wanted to talk to you about the Fox Ridge project. This project began a little over 2 years ago, actually. We were approached by the county, we being the Soil and Water Conservation District. We were approached by the county to look at the area down where I think now they have practice football fields for the youth leagues. There's some pretty severe bank erosion going on down there on the Osage River. And we were asked to come in and look at it and see if we could maybe find some grant money to stabilize that bank. And we did. We found some money through Clean Water Management Trust Fund to do that. And we actually I contacted our engineer, our staff engineers with the Division of Soil and Water Conservation. And he was good. He asked him if he could do the plan, do the design for us to save us some money, something we could use for match. And he agreed to do that. And we actually were out at the survey. Actually, we're already setting up a survey and everything. And quite accidentally, we found out that that is Duke Power jurisdiction. That elevation level there, the Osage River, is part of their property boundary for Lake Emery. So that kicked us into a whole different category of having to get permits. We had to go through.
Lake Emery backs up that far?
It's 2,000.22 feet MSL, which 2,000.22 feet above sea level. It actually goes all the way back nearly to where 441 overpass comes in. They control that far back. So anyway, we had to. What was a relatively simple process became a little more complicated. We had to, because of that, Duke requires that you notify and solicit comments from 9 federal, state, and local agencies. Then you turn this in, this is right here, an application to Duke, and along with this application, you have to turn in $4,000 for the review. So they did 2,000 of it is reimbursable, 2,000 is not. We consulted with them, and they agreed to drop the 2,000, since it's county property, agreed to drop the 2,000. It is reimbursable. They would not drop the 2,000. It's not reimbursable. So anyway, this is all background, and I gave out some packets that has most of the season. But anyway, we proceeded with it, and in November of 2012, we presented before the board a request for that $2,000 permit fee, and you guys unanimously agreed to do that. What happened is I was a little bit premature, I guess. I think I assumed some things, and we all know what assuming does, apparently. I learned pretty quickly. That I assumed that we would be done by the end, with the permit process by the end of that fiscal year, which was one thing. That quickly became apparent that wasn't going to happen. And the other thing I assumed is that if we weren't done by the end of the fiscal year, that would roll over and be in our budget and roll over, and it didn't. We're just now finally getting back all the comments. We had to go through an archaeological survey, which you guys are familiar with that, Parker Meadows, I'm sure. Several things like that, but we have everything in place. We have all the comments back. We have the permits in place. It is ready to go to Duke. And what I'm here for tonight is to request that money was never spent. It was taken to the contingency fund, and it was never spent. So I'm going to ask you guys if you guys would, I guess, you'd be willing to put that money back in. $2,000. And the reason for that is we have money for the bank stabilization. We did not have money set up in that for a permit fee or anything like that. And in fact, Clean Water won't pay for permit fees or anything. Any questions you guys have, I'd be happy to try to into it. And there's pictures in there, and it's actually gotten quite a bit. It's gotten considerably worse than what it was before.
How far is that from that light stand, Doug?
It's still a ways from the light stand. I'll tell you what it is, though. It is if you've been down there, there's a parking lot that they put in, the secondary parking lot down on the left-hand side, and it's only about 30 feet from that parking lot right now, from the edge of that parking lot. So it's getting worse. It's encroached quite a bit. And like I said, this is a copy. If anybody, this is the entire plan that we'll go to do. If anybody wants to welcome to that. And it's not guaranteed that Duke will, I've talked to Kevin Corbin as the Kevin Holland is the representative for Duke County. He took Lisa Levin's place, and I've been working through him. He's been very helpful, and he's kind of guided me in what we need, and everything. And he seems to think it won't be a problem until this review. The other thing is the clean water money is scheduled to expire March 31st of next year, so we need to get it. I talked clean water, and they will most likely give us an extension on that if we're not done by then. But it's pretty much a standard thing. As long as we've got plans in place.
Questions for us? Mr. Matt?
It be fixed.
I was just gonna make a motion for 2000 contingency. Take the application.
Motion been made to remove 2,000 from contingency to, so we can get this project started to protect the county property.
Make the motion.
Motion been made and seconded, we move $2,000 from contingency into the Duke fund. We really need the money. And any further discussion?
I will say that Mike and Doug, they do a lot of good things. A lot of times it goes unnoticed. They work really hard. They do a lot of grant money. If you look at the equipment they bought, the fertilizer line spreader, and just continuously going out and busting the tails and looking for grants. They do a really great job. And I appreciate that.
There was a good article in the press about the equipment. If y'all haven't seen it. The press did a good job with it. They did a good job.
Really appreciate it.
We were so glad you finally got a truck for me to get from one place to the other.
Appreciate that too.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous, Doug. Thank you.
Thank you.
for
Appreciate
waiting.
you.
We will now move to the revised lease for water wheel manufacturing. County attorney, we looked at this at last meeting and we revisited.
Yes, just very briefly, I got a call from Tommy Jenkins, your EDC director, and he indicated that he's been in discussions with folks at Waterwheel, and they've had a couple of issues come up with the lease that you approved. Fairly minor in my mind. They wanted to change the start date from the 1st of September to the 15th of September. And the second item was that they wanted to address the utilities feature. This is a company that is going to be doing water jet cutting and fabrication. The way it's set up down there at the business center is for the tenants to share the water bill. This particular company is going to be using considerably more water than the other tenants. And the idea was to incorporate the provision in the will that would let them pay pretty much their fair share of the water, if you will. So those two changes are it. Have prepared a resolution, again declaring the property to be surplus and approving 1-year lease as revised.
Motion made and seconded, we approve the resolution to Macon County Board of County Commissioners declaring the property to be surplus and approving a 1-year lease of the same by Macon County Water Wheel Manufacturing, Inc. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. We will now move on to new business. Consideration of lease agreement with Harmony House Foods Incorporated. Mr. Council.
This is another one I got a call from Tommy Jenkins on. Harmony House, as you know, has been in the facility, I believe, a year now. And I understand from Mr. Jenkins he's doing well. We want to re-up for another year. Mr. Jenkins has asked me to prepare a resolution and 1-year lease to accomplish that, and has asked me to present that to the board this evening.
Is this the same verbiage as the other one?
Terms are the same, we changed dates.
Motion been made and seconded that we approve the resolution of the Macon County Board of County Commissioners declaring the property to be surplus and approving a 1-year lease for the same by Macon County to Harmony House Foods, Inc. and North Carolina Business Corporation. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. Moving on, we now move to consideration of the interlocal agreement for recreation with the town of Highlands. Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is basically just an interlocal agreement that states that the county and the town of Highlands will cooperate and jointly undertake the provision of certain parks and recreation facilities, just basically formalizing the county's support of the town of Highlands recreation park and their park system up there. Furthermore, it formalizes the $500,000 that we voted in our fiscal year 14-15 budget to provide the town of Highlands for their recreation expenses. It lays out the terms of that payment as well as the agreement as to how we're reimbursed for utilities and things such as that. It's entered into every year. To my knowledge, Chester had an opportunity to look at it again. It was last second today, but he certainly obliged us by looking at it. And Mr. Counselor, if you have any additional comments or to that, then I
It
would.
complies with the statute dealing with interlocal agreements and what have to do.
But the verbiage is basically the same here as we've done each year.
I don't know the answer to that. I haven't been involved in drawing with it any. So
It is, yes. Motion been made that we approve the interlocal agreement for recreation with town of Highlands. We have a second. Motion been made and seconded. We approve the interlocal agreement for recreation with town of Highlands. And give the county manager authorization to enter into same. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Now we move on to the endorsement of the Sit for 60, Move for 3 inches program. Sit for 60, Move for 3 program. That's Mr. Mike Beck.
Joe, this is something that came at the time. We've learned and found that through studies and other things that sitting for prolonged periods of time leads to a number of other health problems. We've also learned that when you get support from the top down on health issues and wellness issues like this, it seems to go a lot further with our workforce. And I'm not asking you to make this policy, simply asking you to endorse this as a program that we're going to move forward with and make it part of our law program.
Any questions on the Sit for 60, Move for 3?
make a motion.
Motion been made and seconded that we endorse the HR's director's recommendation of the Sit for 60 and Move for 3. Any questions for the HR director?
Just as a little aside to what Mike said, if we're moving in and looking at changes to our insurance, we're noticing that for sure what's going to come of it is focused toward personal wellness and personal well-being, and that employees doing everything they can to try to minimize their health risks on their own. That does involve walking around, moving, exercise, eating right, and all those things. And this is just one of many things that can contribute to keeping down those medical claims and our medical costs as we pursue savings on future insurance plans.
You've heard the motion and the second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That vote is unanimous. So now let's move on to the consideration of the lease agreement for the community care clinics in Franklin and Highlands. Mr. Turner.
Jim Bruckner had asked me to work with him about renewing existing leases that we have for both the Community Care Clinic in Franklin, Inc., as well as Community Care Clinic in Highlands, Inc. These are one-year leases, and I have proposed resolution in connection with each of them. Terms are the same as last year. Motion to approve.
The motion been made and seconded. We approve the leases, consideration of lease agreements for the community care clinics in Franklin and Highlands as approved by the county attorney. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That would be unanimous. We will move on to the consideration of agreement to provide recreation opportunities with the Scaly Mountain Historical Society, Inc. Mr. Councilman.
Likewise, this is an arrangement that the county has had with the Scaly Mountain Historical Society to ensure recreation opportunities in that area. They have had an agreement to accomplish that, and it is time to renew that agreement. And I have prepared the proposed agreement, which is essentially the same as last year's, except that the dates have changed. So we would need to authorize the chairman to fill in the blank on page 2. I did not have the sum that was budgeted for this $55,000. Okay.
Mr. Attorney, I might have missed it reading through it, but what is insurance for that part? Insurance.
In this particular case, they are required to handle that facility.
Is that in, is that spelled out? Did I just overread it?
There is, I don't know that there is necessarily specifically the rest here, but that, as you can
If
see,
it's not needed, that's fine.
they are basically independent contractors in this situation.
Right.
Let me see.
Property insurance liability.
Yeah, there is a provision under paragraph 8 which does require the maintenance, property damage, and liability insurance.
Okay. We have a motion. So we have a second on that, we did? All right, we have a motion and a second that we approve the agreement to provide recreation opportunities with the Scaly Mountain Historical Society, Inc. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. We will now move to the consent agenda. Gentlemen, you'll read the items A through F. On the consent agenda, are there any items you'd like to have removed for discussion on the consent agenda?
I need to question the board on board.
Okay. We will take out the tax releases. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Or budget amendments? Which one? Budget amendments?
Actually, just
Okay, we will remove the tax releases, which is C, from the consent agenda for discussion. Any others? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve all those with the exception of C under the consent agenda. We have a second. Do we have a second to approve? Are you going to go through them one by one? We have a second on the motion to approve the agenda, consent agenda A through F, excluding C.
let's see.
Motion been made and seconded on the consent agenda, excluding C from A through F. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, Mr. Higgins.
I just read through these every time. I ask you the same question, I guess. What does this mean?
Actually, I'm not the person for you. That's Margaret Perry, if you like her. I'm not really sure Chester might
Well, I haven't actually looked at that particular thing, but there are limits of when taxes can and cannot be released. And you will probably see on that report, read it, clerical error. That is one reason for you to be able to release taxes. Very limited reasons under the Machinery Act. My understanding that, I could be wrong on this, I was thinking that Richard Light actually did this. I could be wrong on that. But my understanding, they review it for appropriateness and recommend it consistent with the machine. It's pretty good size this time, pretty good amount, and that.
It tells
Is
what
there
it
a place
is.
where it talks about
All of
clerical-
them, it tells what each one of them is and the reason it was done.
I can tell you clerical error is one specific reason allowed by the Machinery Act to release taxes. Give me a reading on the first one.
Reason of which one, Paul? Page 1 or 2?
Page 66.
No, I don't have that. I've got one, it says
Page one.
Woodland property,
Yeah,
recent appraisals. R appraisals.
okay, are we done with that?
All right, R appraisals, R appraisals, R appraisals, R appraisals, clerical,
What does that mean?
clerical could mean that
No, the
they,
appraisal. Does that mean that HOA,
the property, well, this is under the property owner association.
yeah, yeah.
And they've come before Richard, that says that due to the appraisals at the time that the county appraised it, that their appraisals, there was a discrepancy of some sort. That would be a question for Richard to clarify. But there'd been a discrepancy there in something, and the Machinery Act, which is so convoluted, as Chester will tell you, but Richard knows probably as good as
Are some of
anybody.
these function or action taken by the Board of Justice?
Are they meeting now? Well, they could have met back, yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, they could-
just be filled.
They could have been, but what I'd recommend, probably just give old Richard a call.
Yeah, I didn't know where to.
And go in and sit down with him, and that would be the best.
I mean, I'm not questioning this process, it's just that I do not have it in my mind. I understand.
Well, I think you're being wise to raise questions if you don't understand.
I don't have enough.
Because it is something that the commissioners, they're responsible for.
And there's some pretty good numbers here, and a pretty good list, but I don't know what action we'll take on it.
And I would just sit and talk to Richard about that. I mean, there's not, I mean, he doesn't make, he's an elected, he's an appointed official, so.
We can put it off until the next continuance meeting.
Is there something hinging on this?
Continue and then Richard come explain. That makes it go better. I'm fine with
We
it.
can have him here in 2 weeks.
Do you want to set something in a certain office somewhere?
I don't know that.
I've got to get more information on it.
So you want to hold that one out until these tax releases, probably we can get more information, that's fine.
If it requires action, I do not have enough knowledge to vote.
That's fine. Do we have a consensus of the board to withhold C tax releases until we recess this meeting to the next meeting? So, with that, we'll move on. On behalf of Kevin Corbin and Holly Springs Baptist Church, thank you for the resolution. They had a great attendance for the 100th anniversary. And we're really honored that the county would recognize that. There are some other, you'll see some other churches coming up pretty soon with the 100th anniversary. But you'll also be asking for the resolution. There'll be 2 or 3 other churches coming up soon, so. And we'll be helping those out, we know. Under 12, appointments. A is ratification of email poll regarding appointments to the Highlands Tourism Development Commission. Mr. Manager.
Yes, Mr. Decker has the information on that. There was a couple of appointments to the Highlands Tourism Development Commission that we didn't get on at the last meeting. They were supposed to be on the agenda at our July meeting, but the Highlands Tourism Development Commission was needing those appointments to fill the seats. So we sent out a polling at the board, and those 2 members were unanimously achieved consensus.
You got their name, Andy?
They're not Jim. Highlands Tourism Development.
Rick Siegel,
And Wolf Gingrich.
More about that.
Yeah, there we go. Everybody's good.
We have,
Up to reappoint Rick Siegel. Very great spot.
we have a motion to ratify the email poll regarding the 2 appointments to the Highlands Tourism Development Commission. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? The next, we have a commissioner appointment to the Smoky Mountain LMA MCO County Commission Advisory Council. What this is under the new statutes of how the LMA board is put together. They've asked that. They have a County Commission Advisory Council. It's a Kisher sister council that they put in. I'm still on the board. I'm willing to be the advisory council also if I can do that. Probably it would be good if we had somebody else that, they're gonna be meeting Saturday in Asheville. If you miss that meeting, if any commissioner here would like to volunteer to do that, if not, I will assume that you, if you want to do it, they're more than welcome. We have a second. Motion been made and seconded. We let Commissioner Bill take this appointment from LME MCO and the Kisser Sister Advisory Council meeting. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Now, gentlemen, Mike, there was one more thing I wanted to ask you about the
community funding.
Community funding pool.
At the board's June meeting, I believe, there were a total of 4 seats that were open. And at that time, the board requested that we go back and check with each of those individuals to see if they were willing to continue to serve. Cindy Reed and Jennifer Jones were willing to continue. Mary Ann Sloan was not, Hammond Rowell was not. So at a subsequent meeting in July, you okayed Cindy Reed and Jennifer Jones. Karen Wallace was working on filling the other slots or getting potential appointees for those two slots. We have been anticipating an application from I believe Jennifer Cresswell. I have not received that yet, and Karen is still searching for someone to fill that fourth slot. Okay.
So those other spots, they did not have a quorum to meet. They do have a quorum, they can go ahead and be meeting, right?
2 of the 4 open seats really have been filled.
Okay.
With those 2 reappointments, but there are 2 that are still open.
If we know somebody to be good, this is a very important committee. That is money that we've allocated to them, so.
And perhaps we can bring back something to you on the 26th.
All right, gentlemen, are there any need? Does anybody have requests for closed session?
Yes.
To what purpose?
The attorney-client privilege,
That's what we're at.
5 West Main Street.
What now?
Right.
Okay, so do we anticipate any action coming out of closed session? Mr. Turner?
Oh, no. I haven't
Manager,
been
do you
consulted.
anticipate any action?
There very well could be. I mean, I don't know. There could be, there could not be. I mean, I don't know. It's,
Oh, all night.
Really?
You know or you
You
don't
always
know?
say no.
It's a yes or no question.
You have to stay.
No. If they are, you'll be notified by email first thing in the morning. By the way, before y'all leave, this meeting will be recessed until August the 6th at 6 p.m. Okay?
So with me, like phone call, somebody, when you guys are
So we have a motion to recess this meeting until Tuesday, August 26th at 6 p.m.
What's mine?
5 West Main Street. That's the motion. Thank you, Mr. Tate. Seconded by Mr. Haven. All in favor say aye. Aye. Thank y'all.
Perfect.